Hello everyone, it's Heath, and in this video we're going to be continuing a look at some of the notes that I made on the 5th edition of the Dungeons & Dragons RPG when we were looking at potentially using it for a medieval Cthulhu Mythos RPG that we were developing over with Infinite Black. And so these are some of the notes that I had regarding my concerns about the 5th edition rule set that we might want to address. And so in this video, we're going to be taking a look specifically at damage dice and also how criticals might go. Because people have asked me in the other videos when I was talking about potentially using 2d10 or 3d6, how I would do criticals. And if you're still interested in having critical damage occur on the attack roll, or that's the indication of critical damage, then definitely the critical ranges need to be adjusted for different weapons or different characters, whether you're rolling a 2d10 or 3d6. And there was information in the Unearthed Arcana book that was the 3rd edition book that if you were making those adjustments or using a bell curve system for Dungeons & Dragons, how you would adjust what they were calling threat ranges at the time. So that information was in there, and you could certainly start with something like that. On the other hand, it's not completely clear to me that the critical damage, if you're going to be having critical damage, should be indicated on the attack roll. It might be, but on the other hand, I was wondering, should damage dice explode? And by explode, what I'm talking about is if you roll the highest value on a damage die, then you would roll another die and then add those numbers together. And you could potentially keep going if you were rolling maximum on your damage dice. Now, some people, or some game systems, and I believe Hackmaster might be like this, uses the term penetrating rather than exploding. And in some cases, it will say the next die is that die -1. And if you roll maximum again, it's that die -2. So you can't go on and on forever and ever, but those are tweaks to the system you could look at either way. But I was definitely also thinking about this exploding damage dice in the context of a non-inflationary hit point system, which I also discussed in another video, because I tend to not like it when the hit points go up and up and up and up based on character level and experience and that kind of thing. I would rather have some type of understanding of exactly what hit points are and then be able to standardize that for what is that value for typical humans or more muscular humans and then weaker humans and things like that, which would allow me to calibrate weapon damage a bit better and not have to deal with this inflationary curve with the hit point system. And that means that one way that you could handle critical damage and potentially have, yes, even a dagger strike take out, a typical human, because yes, you can die by, having somebody stab you in the neck with a dagger. Can happen. I was thinking about this regarding exploding damage dice. In order to make combat more threatening, I think damage dice should explode. If you roll the highest value of the die, then the die is re-rolled and that new number is added to the damage total. This continues as long as the maximum of the re-rolled dice is rolled. This would mean that weapon damages would need some adjustments. A longsword, for instance, rather than doing 1d8 slashing damage, should do 2d4 damage. This also creates an expected probability curve on many, but not all of the weapons. It also provides a little more variety if some weapons could do something like 1d4 plus 6 damage, for instance. Damage is still modified by strength as normal, bonuses to damage are flat, and they do not explode with dice. This means that yes, if the typical human has 10 hit points, a dagger would do 1d4 damage, which means that it's not particularly threatening, but it's not completely out of the question that that dagger could in fact kill you, because if you roll a 4, then you roll again, and then you roll another 4, that's already up to 8, and then if you roll again, you could take out all 10 of those hit points, which would indicate, to me, a critical strike. Now, that is moving the critical damage and the critical roll over to the damage instead of the to-hit roll. And, we did the series on the channel already called Looking at Realism in RPG Combat, where we were looking at the essay that John Clements had written, and this is one of the things that we looked at, and I kind of feel similar to him in this regard, that when I'm just thinking about how should damage be done, sometimes I think that damage and to hit rolls should be the same thing, that they need to all be rolled into one hit so that a really good hit is one that does more damage. Because if you're just using like an AC system, ignoring critical hits, no matter how much you exceed the AC, you still have this other roll where you might do a lot or a little damage because those are separate. So I can definitely see arguments where you would unify those rolls. I also see reasons why you would not unify those rolls and you would preserve a separate damage roll from your to hit roll. On the other hand, I think you could do something like a unification of an attack roll and a damage roll especially if you are rolling the damage die with the to hit dice at the same time, which is something that at least some editions of Dungeons & Dragons have recommended anyway, in order to speed the combat rounds along anyway. You know, if you don't hit, then just ignore the damage die, but if you do hit, then the damage die is sitting right there, and I think that could be a good thing. So if you're rolling like a 2d10 system, you also have your damage dice there along with the roll, and then you roll to hit and damage at the same time. If your to hit dice, with whatever bonus or penalty dice are included or whatever, do manage to exceed the threshold necessary to hit your opponent, then not only is the margin of success considered when you're inflicting damage, so those become damage points. If you exceed by, the target's AC by 2 points, maybe that's already 2 points of damage right there, plus whatever damage dice you are rolling for your weapon and strength modification. It's only if you've managed to hit that those extra dice come in. And I think that's a pretty interesting thing to look at. I would really want to be able to play around with that. Especially then if you have exploding damage dice, I think that would allow people to get in and get brutal potentially very fast. And might play reasonably fast at the table as well. Because my current thinking regarding the game right now is not that I want combat to be a long slog where everybody's going around in rounds trying to chip off a large number of hit points. I want things to, combat to be intense, it to be brutal, and it to be significant when it happens. And so this is a potential way to do it. So let me just take notes of that right here. So this is attack, roll dice, and damage dice made at the same time, or rolled simultaneously. 2d10, let's say we're using 2d10 for attack roll, damage dice and bonus from stats, damage dice, let's say from weapon. We could get into a system where we are using like a GURPS-based system where damage is predominantly determined by strength and the weapon modifies that. Could go that route, but let's say damage dice from weapon, much more like classic Dungeons & Dragons, and then bonuses from strength. I will notice that Hackmaster gives bonuses for intelligence to your combat roll, so it pays off to be a smart fighter. We were talking about that in the comments section of another video, and I personally haven't seen that outside of Hackmaster. It may be in other systems as well. But let's say from strength right here, if attack dice exceed, let's just call it armor class, attack hits, damage is equal to attack roll minus AC plus damage dice. Damage dice explode. What about that? That's kind of my current thinking right now. I don't know if this is good or not, but those are the kinds of things that I might want to think about if I were trying to develop a system right now and try to play test it, see if it works. I don't know. What do you think? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and all of that jazz. It really helps a lot. But also, please check out The Cultists, the web series on this channel about modern-day D&D playing Lovecraftian cultists who just want to worship Cthulhu in a world full of people who just don't understand. Season 1 is on the channel now. But also, please check out my YouTube channel. I have over 150 videos on tabletop games and the fantasy genre. If you've enjoyed this video, you might enjoy many of them as well. I look forward to seeing you for them and many more videos to come. Later.